Charlie Kidder's our speaker this morning. I think most of you know Charlie, but just as way of background, Charlie says he was born in New York City, but has basically lived his life south of the Mason-Dixon line. I think people know Charlie as a volunteer here at the Arboretum. He pretty much takes care of the Xeric Garden, or leads the maintenance of the Xeric Garden, does tours, has been on the board of advisors for 4 years of the Arboretum, did a course last year on trees, woody plants in the Arboretum. Is currently working on the upcoming Gala in the Garden. Does a lot of work around here. In addition to being a member of the Piedmont chapter in NARGS, he's also a member of the North Carolina Native Plant Society, the North Carolina Friends of Plant Preservation, and while there were still the entrance gardens at the North Carolina Museum of Art, Charlie took care of the maintenance on those gardens. He writes a monthly garden column for the Crozet Gazette up in Virginia and contributes to the Triangle Gardener, and has done a variety of lectures through the Encore program at NC State and elsewhere. He lives in Cary, grows a variety of things, including things that like xeric conditions. So with that, I'll turn it over to Charlie, who will walk from the back of the room to the front. We do have a lot of plants, and in the interest of getting out of here by noon, we'll probably go directly from Charlie's talk into the plant auction.
What are you going to do for show and tell?
Yeah, after Charlie's tell.
Okay.
Thanks, David. And now that you've seen I own a jacket, I can take it off. I used to work with a guy, he would carry it in every day, hang it up. But I guess if the governor or somebody came in, but not. Okay, is my mic live? Can people hear me? Because I can't hear much. Make sure I get my remote. I was kind of, I would say, taken aback or honored or something when Bobby Ward asked me several months ago to do this talk. Not that I didn't feel like wanted to, but I think it was a bit surreal that I was talking about a garden that was about 100 feet that way. Or if you go to the roof, maybe 50 feet that way. And I don't know if we've ever done that before. We're talking about a garden that's right out there. And I think I even said, well, can I just do a tour? That wasn't going to work. And, A, you never know what the weather's going to be. And by showing slides, I can go more to the history, show you what happens over the years, over the months. So that's why we're here. But, obviously after this, go look at the garden. It'll still be there. Okay. I guess we can dim the lights anytime, except I'll have to, this is very crude. I got enough light. Unlike Tony, who can rattle off hundreds of things, I'm going to have to look at my sheet occasionally. And I got to tell you, it's intimidating having Tony and Tim in the same audience. I know if I get it wrong, somebody might speak up. Yeah. Okay, where did we come up with the name? Well, a few months ago, I was working in the garden. I encountered this gentleman. He looks familiar. I have no idea who he is. He apparently wandered over from the university club with a cocktail in hand, was admiring an agave, but have to ask him to leave. Except for the gala, we don't have alcohol in the garden. But I can't blame him for admiring that agave. And incidentally, that one is right about out there, Agave, Montana. And it was doing something kind of unusual, and I'll get more into agaves and what they do later. But they usually flower, if they're going to flower, start growing their stalk in, say, April. Usually by May they're completed. This guy was starting in the fall. And by late, I guess, into November, he stopped, and now it's starting again. It looks like it's opening up at the top and about to really do the flower. Anyhow, so he gets one last sip, and then he's out of here. Just a little refresher. Probably everybody knows where we are. I don't know if we have any newbies, but here's the Arboretum. Can I make yeah. There's the building, and of course the roof garden is on the roof. The scree garden is right outside that wall, and the Xeric Garden is a bit further down the hill. And if you're wondering why there's this space here, the lawn, that's geothermal wells, which apparently we can't plant anything on except turf, which is actually now mostly clover. And incidentally, when I said we could go out that way about 100 feet and see the garden, probably better to use the door rather than try to walk through the wall. Because I had this science teacher in 9th grade, Mr. Richard Clark, still remember his name. He wasn't Dick Clark, rest in peace. He wanted to explain to us or illustrate how matter is mostly empty space. So you've got the nucleus of the atom, and then the electrons are way out here. But all of us are mostly empty space, probably some more than others. And he said, based on the fact that I'm mostly empty space and this door is empty space, I should be able to walk through. So he said, does everybody believe me? Yeah, we believe him. So he just walked through the door and slammed. He hit it hard, but he was okay. I'm not going to try that. Trust me, use the door. Just reviewing our mission. This is sort of why we have a Xeric Garden, among other gardens. Promote responsible, inspirational design and management of cultivated landscapes through plant development and evaluation, as well as academic and public education. This sounds all very formal and bureaucratic. It translates to the guy with the most plants in the end wins. Or plants don't read, you might as well try them in your garden. So some of the early attempts, obviously way before my time, I've been here 9 years, didn't always work. This was 1981. You can see one agave is doing fine, the rest are kind of mush balls. And incidentally, this, I guess, was one of JC's slides, or at least it's in his collection. And I'm going to say now, before I forget, probably about half the pictures in this show are mine and half are from our collection, so people like Tim took them. And I'm thanking them ahead of time before I forget. So we've got a lot of slides that other folks took. But jumping way ahead, and I'll go back in time a bit later, but in 2006 we really decided to do Xeric Garden and Xeric Gardens right. So this is, again, just west of the building. We killed some turf. You can see the flags laying out the paths. And then we applied our secret soil recipe, which is not too secret. 25% permatill, 75% sandy loam to build up the beds in the Xeric and Xeric Garden. I just took a wild guess because I couldn't find any numbers in the records of how many yards we have to bring in. I came up with 500. It sounds crazy, but I paced it off more or less and got a height. It's a lot of yards, a lot of soil. So it's almost like if you try this at home, be prepared to bring in a lot of permatill or soil. And in case you haven't heard of permatill, I think most of you have, it's sold as vol block sometimes. This is their formal definition on the website. Rotary kiln, expanded slate, lightweight aggregate, mined out near Asheboro, North Carolina. Produced by Carolina State Light. Of course, it's not cheap, but it lasts forever. I mean, at least, geological time, it'll break down, but not in our lifetime. And if you do buy it by the yard and pick it up, it's about $95 locally. So this is showing some of the work in 2006. Of course, there was Tim and James Lale, who was his assistant at that time, prepared to spread this soil mix. See some nice large boulders we had. And by late summer 2006, it was completed. So you can see the berms and the large rocks, and then it was shortly after it was planted. And again, this would be, I believe, late 2006, probably September, at least according to. If you ever look at our slide collection, indoor photo collection on the Arboretum's website, it's huge. I think it's like 80,000 pictures and 90,000 slides. I may have it backwards. Many. And they all should have a date and who's standing in it, so if you wanted to waste your time on Google Charlie Kidder, not Google, but search Charlie Kidder, you'll see every slide I'm in. Or anybody else, if you're in a slide and somebody knew it. So by next spring, we had it look like a garden. It was starting to bloom. Got some cistus here. And of course, the salvia is really the mainstay of the Xeric Garden, I'd say, as far as color. About 8 months of color. Salvia gregii. We have others. So we completed that garden, and then we went up on the roof well, we redid the roof in 2007. When we get back to that. Soil mix up there is different because you need something very light because it's on the roof. So that mix is 55% permatil, 30% sand, and 15% compost. And I'm kind of wondering about this part of the compost. Like, that's probably breaking down. Do we need to add more, or is just enough settle from the debris of the plants? I really don't know the answer to that. So far, everything looks fine. So going back in time to 2002, when the building was being dedicated, of course, there was nothing up there except containers and permatil. And it was a place where you could party. You might recognize Bob Lyons and Dean Wynn at the July 4th party we used to have, and they were standing in the beds. And the early iteration of a garden on the roof was what I call the row crop era. Pretty much just laid out in rows, not a lot of verticality. And I think what you're seeing here in between the plants that are supposed to be there, you see this kind of reddish, that is probably spurge, I'm guessing. That is just the curse of that garden. Don't get me started on weeds, but that's the one that loves it hot and dry. It usually doesn't show up this way. If you're out there looking for it, you can walk by it 3 times, and then you see it. Sometimes people call it camo plant. So that was the early era. In spring of 2007, we started the current era on the roof. New plantings, we built up some berms to get some vertical interest and space for larger plants. The large Agave salviana here, I believe, was already in the garden somewhere else, or maybe in the back and was moved out. That one has since, we'll see later, has since flowered, but has many pups, so it lives on. And by February 2009, I believe, starting to fill in, and even in the winter, it has a fair amount of interest. It's a gray day, but you still see some color out here, like the, oops, there we go. Euphorbia rigida starting to flower. And of course, in summer, it looks even better.
How deep is the soil, John?
I think at the most, it's foot and a half.
Yeah, that's around roughly anywhere from probably 6 inches to a foot and a half.
Okay, yeah, so never very deep. And thanks to Rock Art Society, we got a grant from the National to, I guess, really to buy some material, but it was appreciated. So that plaque is up there on the roof. Okay, now the third area we redid was the old Xeric Garden, which dates from the early 90s, was expanded. So there were Xeric plants in here, like this big yucca, some apunchas, dating, I believe, from the early 90s. And it's surprising how well they've done, because as far as I know, that soil down there was not amended. It has a permatil mulch. But it's a fairly wet, soggy area. This is, these are bald cypresses coexisting with cacti. It really shows how bald cypress is pretty tough. You really need it that wet. But the Xeric things have been remarkably persistent. But when it came time to expand the Xeric Garden, and it was called the Southwest Garden, now it's called the Xeric Garden, because the things are not just from the Southwest U.S., they're from everywhere. A lot of things you had to go. You can see these stumps of trees out here. And my recollection is Denny Werner, who was a director at that time, formed what was called the Woody Plant Committee. And Mike Durr was on that committee because he was living in the area at the time. And they more or less decided, this is something we don't need. It's everywhere, or it's a weed maker, so we can get rid of it. So that's what had to happen. And a lot of digging, and you can see the nasty clay we have to deal with. And of course, here's the spray garden up here. Now we're expanding downhill. And I like this shot. It got Anthony Beck, who was what's the word, technician, or youth technician?
Technician assistant.
Technician assistant. and a couple of our interns, and I don't know their names. They're probably labeled on the picture. But I thought what was funny about it is Anthony back, he's been working, he's sweating. The other guys look clean as a whistle. But that has not meant, the interns work hard. They probably just, arrived at that moment or coming from something else. But there was a lot of work going on there, building the stone walls. And again, this is, I believe, 2008. And of course, you can see Tim laboring away there. These are the fall cypresses I mentioned. This is March 2008. And some of the plants we put in the new Xeric Garden were actually quite large, like this Beauty of Palm, because it had been in various places around the Arboretum where the certified plantsman would before that. That's a plant that's barely hardy here in a bad winter, like the winter before last. It looked like it wasn't going to make it. It came back fine. And this winter, it looks like no problem. But it's the kind of thing that's happier at Wilmington, but it does get by here. So this is not planting completed, but the beds are completed. The planting has started in April 2008. So you can see a few things in there. And of course, again, the Xeric Garden is filling in pretty well, although it's always surprising when you look at a picture of a garden, labels really pop out. If you walk through it, I don't think they show up as much. You're probably concentrating on the plants. And if you want to know what something is, you look at the label. But you just show a picture, look at all those labels. So, April 2008, and you'll notice here the beds look a little bit sort of mottled or strange, a little white there. What happened? Late April 2008 was a great gully washer. I don't know how many inches of rain. It really scoured things out. It showed us where the water would go. Nothing like a powerful, rainstorm to show you that. So there was a lot of that going on. And then to correct it, we went back and put those large white, I guess it's called river jack or river rocks, to stabilize those areas. They're a bit visually stunning to me, maybe a bit much, but they do the job. Harriet Beller show, if anybody knows her, and then again, it shows the wash that occurred. This should be solid Chapel Hill gravel or Chapel Hill grit, but it did get quite scoured out. But live and learn. So at this point, I believe this would be late 2008. Again, things are filling in pretty well. You'll see some progression here. This is a Zelkovan, I believe, right? Probably Ogon. That's why its top growth is gold. But you'll see that get bigger in the next slide or two. Yeah, quite a bit bigger there. I believe this is 2010. I should be looking at my notes to cheat, but it's hard to do. Okay, so that's the general layout of how we got where we are now. So look at some of the plants. This would just be an alphabetical order, except I say what my favorites will come at the last. Try to guess what those are. Anybody guess what that is? Tim, don't say it. Tim knows what it is. Anybody else? Well, Jessica Perry got it, yeah. It looks like sugar maple, and essentially it is. It's Mexican sugar maple, either another species or variety of sugar maple, but it grows in the highlands of Mexico, I think maybe a little Guatemala, and a few isolated patches. But it looks pretty much like our sugar maple, and yet it's happy out there. I think it's a good 10, 12 feet tall now. And gets great fall color, late in the year. So Acer Scotchii or Acer Saccharum variety, Scotchii, that people listen to. Okay, some allium. This is, I think, called pink lily leaf. But that's really the pink lily leaf. Allium molly got into the mix. Cheap. This is allium pink feathers, which I read online as a butterfly magnet, and sure enough, it is. Oh, is this a butterfly or moth? Butterfly. Good. Okay. I always thought somehow the way they rested with their wings made a difference, or is that not?
Yeah. Not
The knobs. Okay, Amocraris caranica, missing in action. A few months ago, I came out the garden and thought, where is this? And I thought it was there. Plant and label gone. So we're going to lock the doors and everybody can search. And good old snapdragon, antirrhinum. This does really well up there, and it reseeds, but not to an obnoxious extent. The older plant will die, but a new one will pop up near it. So a good thing to have for a lot of color. Is asphodoline or asphodolini? Anybody give me a reading on that pronunciation? No. I think neat just for its, foliage. The flowers are just emerging there, but isn't that kind of nice spiral, probably the Fibonacci series, whatever they call that. And this is it just starting to flower. If you go out there now, they are actually upright, maybe a foot in the air. And I wasn't familiar with that plant. I didn't know Berlambiera, subacolus, or Lorata, Florida green eyes. Sometimes known as chocolate plant, and it really does have a good smell, more like cocoa. And there are a few blooms on that now. It's really not in full bloom yet. But it's definitely the kind of thing I love to show on tours. Kids, adults all love that. And Veschneria, this is their complex hybrid backcross, etc. You can read them. I won't even attempt to remember it. Some an agave relative from Mexico. Very tropical looking flowers. Tropical to me, anything that screaming bright looks tropical. This is Bubbia Evil Ways, which you grow as much for the foliage. Well, the flowers are nice too, a deep purple. If it gets a bit ratty looking like summer, cut it down and get new foliage on it. Callistemon, Woodlander's Red. And that's, to me, the only woody shrub we can grow that has a flower like that. It looks anything like that. These are White Australia, definitely a southern hemisphere, and this is, of course, from Woodlanders and Aiken. Did you folks develop this, or just name it, or how did that work?
I don't know the history.
Oh, you don't know the history? Okay.
I'm going there today, I'll ask.
Okay, thanks. Robert said he was going to go there today, and he'll ask the history. This is fern. I know it's called graceful lip fern and Calanthes. Calanthes javapensis. This is one of the best looking ferns we have, and we have a fair number of ferns growing out there, which would surprise a lot of people thinking they didn't want shade and or water. Many of them do fine out there. This one to me does the best. A lot of them look like, take me out of my misery. They're still there, but this one looks very good. This is on the roof, in case you're wondering, on the south bit, about where Bob Lyons was standing a minute. Chalopsis, or desert willow, not a willow at all, relative of catalpas. And was doing great last year, but I think it was the only casualty we had from a tropical storm that came through in late August. Plant is still there, about 3/4 of it is gone, but it looks like, it'll be fine. And Chrysactinia mexicana, Texas, from West Texas. This one seeds around quite a bit. I'd say, respectable amount, not too bad. Fragrant foliage. Cistus, or rock rose, Valeriolenta sunset. These can be difficult, but these, in general in this climate, but we've had several that have done quite well for a few years. Another one seems to be on the way out. A clematis, this is Fremontii from the Ozarks, Kansas area. Very cute little plant. That flower is only about a thimble size. And I believe it's already, it may be flowering now or was flowering recently. This is Clematis hirsutissima from the Rockies. And I just went out there this morning and examined it, and I thought, where does it get the name hairy? Hirsutissima, it didn't seem that hairy to me, whereas the other one was much hairier. Whatever, cute little plant that's right on the bed of the corner out there. And again, that flower is probably an inch long. So not all clematis, as you folks probably know, are large and grow in mailboxes or vines. Okay, Plenipodium, scarlet calamin. This is from the deep south, sandhills. This is a variety called a Hopi yellow. And I'll show my sort of fifth grade boy sense of humor, or OOP yellow, just the name. This is the 4th of July picture, not really literally, but red, white, and blue. A salvia gregii over here, and then convolvulus mauritanicus. This is a good convolvulus, relatively. We've got a horrible one. I picked some of it. You may examine it up here later. Althioides, it is a horrible weed. I hope we can get rid of it. This one is reasonably well behaved. And the Dazzleriums. And we have, I think, at least 3 or 4 of those. This, I believe, is Orlandieri.
Charlie, is there any disadvantage to all of the debris that gets in there and stays? Is it rot?
I hope not. No, maybe there is, but I have not been fastidious about it. And I got to mention the woman who helps me mostly in the garden. I don't do this all alone. Anita Kuhn, probably many of you know. She is more fastidious about this. She will reach in, not with her bare hands, but like a little weeder and get them out. No, I'm glad she does. I don't do a lot of it. I figure if it was in there a foot deep, you'd be in trouble. But I guess it breaks down fast enough, we got some, I haven't noticed a problem yet. So, but a good point. But anyway, I really like the Dazzleriums, I like that twist on the leaf. It comes up and kind of turns, and then the edge is kind of creamy yellow. Dazzlerium texanums. They're all pretty similar to me, but a little bit differences in foliage color. And these are the kind of plants I can go out there and stare at all day. It's better than watching paint dry. I mean, it's just, I don't know. And you get a little breeze, they kind of wave in the wind. That's one in flower. So that's a good, probably 10 feet tall with just hundreds of flowers on it. Bees love. And unlike the agaves, they don't just do it once and croak. They keep coming back. This Dazzlerium is a little bit different, quadrangulatum, because the teeth are not conspicuous. I'm not saying you wouldn't feel something, but it's almost a rounded leaf that is kind of curled in on itself, looking tubular. And that's only from, I believe, a sign here from 3 states in Mexico. And yet another Dazzlerium. Okay, Denmosa cactus from Argentina. I thought one thing that's neat about this is its name, Denmosa. Where'd they get that? It's from the state of Mendoza in Argentina. They just kind of shuffled some letters around, and Mendoza became Denmosa. Apparently, this doesn't always stay globular. It may get a little bit, tall eventually, but it's apparently very slow growing. And talk about things that are, will they hurt the plant? I'm sure this permatil in here is not going to hurt it, and I'm not reaching in there. These are like fish hooks there. Okay, Echeveria ramonii. I just love that for the texture. And as a bonus, you get flowers in the fall. This is Wheeler's. Oh, Erysimum wheeleri. A nice plant from the west. It is a Brassicaceae, member of the mustard, cauliflower, etc. family. So, like a lot of seeds around. I'm not going to call it weedy yet. We'll see. But we have seen a few seedlings, but just great color. Because Euphorbia rigida, speaking of color, even before the flowers, you get great color on the stems. And this does seed around too. I'd say so far so good, not too much. You know, comes out pretty easily. This is Fabigia clypeata, yet another Brassicaceae plant that is also kind of spready. Not going to use the W word yet. But it's nice, felty foliage all year, and then a little yellow flower in the spring. And that's the fruits. They're kind of attractive too. Kind of reminiscent of money plant, and they're the same family. This is Forastera, I have the species wrong, so Angustifolia weeping. And a member of the olive family, and I believe this was flowering in March. So right now it's in full leaf and the flowers are gone, but nice arching structure. We went in there in the winter and kind of cleaned up some of the under part of it to let it show off a bit more. And good old Hesperaloe, I think that's just a great reliable plant. I have it at home in clay, seems happy enough. And I think it's great against the puncha. You'll notice down here, Albizia. This is a curse of the past. We used to have a large Albizia out there against the polyhedge. Luckily it is gone, but its seedlings live on. And Iphion, Rolf Fiedler. I believe this plant can be weedy, but I haven't seen a seedling from this yet. So maybe this is the answer to some prayers. Iris reticulata. What do they call that gourd?
That doesn't look real.
Yeah, and that's only about 2 or 3 inches tall. And then another variety of Iris reticulata, J.S. with a deet, assuming I'm pronouncing the Dutch correctly. And Iris unguicularis. Of course, this was blooming this way January 1st. Again, not a usual winter, but they do bloom off and on most of the winter. The downside to them is that the flowers way down in the foliage, but it just means it's connoisseurs like us that appreciate them. You've got to go by, pause, look down, you'll see it. And I believe this plant's missing too. I couldn't find him today. Tim, do you know?
It was there last week.
Oh, last week. Okay, maybe I was thinking the wrong place. He's probably still there, Letiboria. Where is he?
Down by the big stone in the.
Oh, yeah, I was looking in the wrong place. Sorry.
Next to the yucca shadia.
Okay, glad he is still here. Letiboria. And Lupinus texensis, or Texas lumonix. These are biennials, I believe, or annuals. They reseed. They're just so pretty. I hope they'll cover a lot of space. It reminds me, in the 90s, I thought I got to do this. I got to drive across the country, and I did. And I wanted to see these. It was March, and I even called out to Texas. Said, you know, where are they? When do they bloom? They said, well, it's probably going to bloom soon. But this had been like 6 months, no rain. And I drove across Texas, both ways going, and I saw one of these. But now I can enjoy them. That was a bad year for Texas, but every year's bad for Texas, as far as I can tell. What's this, Manfredo? Yeah, we got a macho mocha. I always want to call this mucho macho, or get the name right. Tony, did you name this?
No, Yucca did.
Oh, Yucca did. But a really great plant for foliage. For us, it seems to get almost deciduous in most winters. This winter got through fine. And Morea, Polystachya. This was blooming this way in January 1st this year. Again, not our typical winter. Notwithstanding Soloianum. This is about 2 inches tall. So it's very fragrant if you're on your hands and knees.
Yeah.
But it's worth getting down there. And I like this just for the mix that occurred, the apuntia and the phlox. Just, I think, a great color and texture combination. It's a puncha and the Chrysactinia. This color combination is a little bit shocking, but you might like it. And the punches, I think, are just great for their texture. I mean, this one looks soft and cuddly. It's not. I think if anybody has ever, if you've ever grown a puncha, you know how easy it is to propagate them. Technically, they say, okay, take a pad, cut it in half, let it kind of dry a bit, and then stick it in the ground. Or is it take a pad, throw it on the ground? You know, if you have a rock or something that'll hold it down, it eventually takes root. This is Athana carifolia, from North Africa. And again, this can flower in winter, in a mild winter. Really nice plant with these kind of spatulate gray-green leaves. It's low to the ground. This is a hardy pelargonium, at least it's been hardy this past winter. You know, pelargoniums are what are usually sold as geraniums for us annuals, but this was got through this winter, but this flowering this way, January, it's flowering now.
That one's been in there for 4 years.
Been there 4 years, wow. Okay. One of the penstemons. The strictus, Rocky Mountain penstemon. And trifloras, apparently just endemic to a dozen Texas counties. But they like good drainage and they get it here. Lomus lignitis, I can't see a whole lot of difference between this lomus and the others we grow, but a good plant for foliage and flower. Pulsatillas are some of my favorites there. Pulsatilla palari. This is from apparently the alpine or subalpine meadows. And they're great in flower and fruit, you know. Sort of looks like clematis, same family, I mean, the flower. This is one of the Restinaceae, a family, I believe, which is only in South Africa, or at least the southern hemisphere. Not a grass, not a sedge, but, you know, related to them. I mean, just a great effect on that stem. And again, I don't know how hardy this, we just had this, what, in the ground 1 year, or 2, 3? Time flies. So hardier than we think. Because I guess we've been down to 15 in the last few years. The Aramnea culturi is from the California desert, I think called Modelia poppy. If you have good drainage, don't plant it, because it will just run amok. I mean, it's very attractive. Great foliage and these fried egg flowers, man, it comes up everywhere. So, you know, nice, but hard to control. But, you know, go out today, look, you'll see the nice foliage. Salvia, Engelmanning, thanks. And good old Salvia gregia, and again, that's our color mainstay. Just many varieties out there in different colors. Sedum, pestry, coral, lemon coral. Nice, shocking color. Sempervivum red heart. And this really works well with the permaculture. Like if you had mulch around that, which probably would not be a good idea anyhow, it would rarely show. But against a gray gravel, it really works. Tetranurus aequalis, Angelita daisy. This was blooming January 1st. And again, this seed's around a bit up on the roof. I think so far it's not really badly behaved. Little tulip species. Tweedia. And I just love the name Tweedia. It just reminds me of some guy from Yale or something. Ivy League guy. But apparently it was named after, I forget his first name, Mr. Tweed from the Royal Botanic Garden in Edinburgh. And he was botanizing in South America and came across this. And had it named after him. But I just picture this guy from Scotland out there in his tweeds, you know, in the pampas, sweltering. This is an ironweed, Vernonia lentimerii, woolly ironweed. I think this is just great for its foliage alone. As you can see, it's starting to flower. This is July 1st last year. And this is receding a bit, but I think very slightly so far. And here's a rest in peace, Vollemia nobilis. I'm not sure how long we had this, maybe a year. Tony, do you have it, or did you have it?
Quite a few, killed quite a few.
Okay. Is that, now, CJ was just telling me they have this at the National Arboretum, is that correct?
That's what I heard, that they
Yeah.
had one there.
And I gave this talk up in the DC area a couple months ago, and somebody, and maybe it was somebody from the Arboretum, saying, oh, we got one 7 feet tall. I'm impressed. No, we couldn't. Even if you know the story on this, it's related to the Araucarias from just a isolated gulch or canyon in Australia, not that far from Sydney, but still pretty much out in the woods. And of course, the location, I believe, is being kept secret. So the only ones that get out are, you know, by control and for sale. Okay, some of the yuccas, I like the yuccas all the time, just even when they're in bud. Yucca rucola, yucca toria, you know, here flowering and budding, so you get the pink and the white, same plant. This just shows the river jack or stones I was referring to earlier to stabilize the little creeks we had going.
You said that one was rubicola?
I believe so, but if you know better, did I have it?
Is that Torian?
Torian, sorry.
Torian.
Yeah, the first one was rubicola, that was Torian. Yeah, thank you. Yucca rostrata, a two-headed variation. You can also see the variegated kudzu we have growing on. Covering the terrace here, but it's variegated, it only grows 10 feet a day. Because it lacks chlorophyll, it slows it down. This is probably one of the older plants in that area, at least from the records I could find online. It says it's from 93 or maybe even a bit earlier, Yucca rostrata. And again, most of the plants down in this area have been there almost 20 years. But I think this one didn't flower until fairly recently, which couldn't be 5 years, you know, when I say recently. To an old guy, that's yesterday. Zephyranthes, San Carlos form. Okay, now to my favorites, the agaves. Agave bracteosa, which is kind of an atypical looking one. Not much in the way of teeth, at least as you can see. I'm sure you could feel something. Flexus spina. What I like about the agaves, among many things, is that, you know, these teeth, contrasting color, kind of burgundy, purple. And this is agave graffiti, but luckily we have not had to endure that yet. This is, I think, a picture that JC took, at least from his collection in Barcelona, Spain. And it just shows when, you know, apparently they don't have beech trees there, so they have to pick on something. So, you know, Roberto, etc., Pedro had, here's Pedro, have carved their names here. You know, if we put a sign out there saying, don't carve your name in the agave, that would happen. So we just have to cross our fingers. I don't think many people are tempted, because we do have beech trees. Agave lophantha, that's a close-up of the inflorescence. Lophantha la buffa, baby. What I like about lophanthas often seem to have some degree of striping down the middle of the leaf, and this takes advantage of that in this variety. I would say Mr. Whipple. I always want to call him Mr. Whipple agave. This is January 2010. He was looking fine. Incidentally, this is an ash here, Fraxinus gregii. But a year later, January 2011, he was not looking so happy. Of course, you know, the winter before last was kind of a funny one. It never got absolutely that cold, but it was cold a long time, and so I was worried about him. luckily, this year he's looking fine. And as you can see, this one has many offsets or pups, which I'm guessing, I don't know if we'll move some of those. Who knows? You know, we might, because they're kind of getting eaten up by the ash tree. So. Seem pretty happy so far. And quite large. It's a agave. Agave.
Yes.
Okay, thanks. Agave, whale's tongue. And that's agave again, surrounded by the salvias. I think they're really nice combination of color and texture. As agave leaves get old, they get a little bit beat up, but it's so hard to get them off, we don't worry about it. You know, maybe if you went in there with a knife, you could saw them off. And a close up again, you can see, you know, these are kind of plants to me you just don't walk by, stop and look at it and appreciate the subtle color. Agave Perrii, probably Perrii wachusensis, the name that Chris Glenn loves to say. Always think Chihuahua, Chris. This was an Olophantha, and I believe he bloomed. I assume that's his excuse for checking out. You can see when if they have pups, the older plant may die, but the pups of various ages will survive. One of our smaller agaves, he was so small I barely got him in the picture. I'm thinking that's probably 6 or 8 inches tall. But a huge inflorescence, Polyanthiflora. Agave Scabra, again, the mother plant did not like one of our rough winters. And we got rid of that, we didn't just leave it there forever. But you can see various pups here. There's one, there's another poking out, even a small one there. And there are many more now out there. Agave Stelmiana. And you can see the imprinting on the leaves from when they're held together tightly and then they open up. It's a really, to me, attractive feature of the agaves. Salmiana Logan Calhoun, I believe, and I kind of looked like I'd been from White Sands, New Mexico. I've been near too many atomic bombs. This is an agave starting to flower. The one that was on the roof that flowered 2 years ago. This is from early April. And Tim, I think we can thank you for these pictures.
Yeah.
Many of these pictures, Tim.
Took a while.
And I believe late April, there's Tim. You can see how much it had grown. And late May, now in full flower up there. Mockingbirds love to come up there and start yelling at you. And then a close-up of the inflorescence and the flowers starting to open. And again, when that mother plant flowers, that one will die, but the pups persist. This is called monocarpic behavior, which it would seem to say single seed, but apparently means single flowering. I had somebody who knows more about plants than I say, well, technically they're not monocarpic because the other plants, or the pups, are living still. So maybe it just depends on your interpretation. Certainly the mother plant has died when she flowers. If you want to go in like I did and dig out some pups, I think we did for the plant giveaway. Probably shouldn't be wearing shorts like I was, but it was July. You get in there with a shovel, you can dig out an agave. They're easy to transplant. And unlike most plants where you would think, okay, get it in the ground as soon as possible, take the agave, knock the dirt off, put it in some corner for a week, a month, doesn't care, and plant it. It's Agave Shadigara. I haven't seen it develop that color again. I don't know if that was a particularly weird winter. Certainly nice color, and then all these threads on the edge, almost yucca-like in respect. And they can take a lot of abuse. This was several years ago. I think this was about 6 inches of sleet, probably Agave Perrii here. You know, there are probably 250, 300 species of agaves and varieties. Some are hardier than others. I mean, just some do fine for us with good drainage. Okay, JC, this I believe was 91 in Mexico. And of course, I guess there's some matter of perspective going on here. Yeah, maybe several feet behind the agave. I don't know if the inflorescence is really as big as it looks. So, wrapping up, I want to thank again all the people that contributed photos. I don't think we even have them all named, but Tim, Chris, Mark Wethington, Nancy Gabrava, Rebecca Pledger. And also thanking people for plants, especially Tony. I think the great bulk of plants we have out there came from him, and several other nurseries, which you can see there. And if we can have the lights, let me make one final pitch for our Agave t-shirt. CJ's wearing the red one, but comes in red and blue. I had meant to wear one today, but I forgot. So if you want to honor the plant, I'll take any questions, and thanks very much.
What about drainage on the roof? Is that a problem? Where does it drain? It's just a flat roof?
You know, I guess it's going off those things at the edge. And
The things on the edge are an emergency drainage when there's a lot of rainfall.
Okay. But otherwise, it's just sitting up there?
Yeah, there's like a plastic underlayment where the water goes down and it collects and then it goes into pipes and disappears.
Yeah, so it's not sitting up there for long. It's a circle.
Do the agave pups, are they attached to the mother plant?
Yeah, they're attached to it. Yeah, they're not seedlings. Any others? Well, thanks again. And enjoy the garden. It's right out there. Don't walk to the wall.
Thank you, Charlie.